Hi, this is Justin Roberti. We're just about to begin a panel discussion on the new empowered retail consumer. So I should be having our cohort joining us shortly. There we are. Okay. I just thought we'd get some sort of introduction, but that was way more fun. Like I said about just being sort of blasted off, like transported on. And all of a sudden everything starts. That's exactly what just happened. And hello, Crystal. It's good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
Glad you could join us. So we have with us today Matthias Bauer-Langgartner, a manager director of UK and Ireland Bitpanda.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me, Justin.
We have Crystal Rose Pierce, who's a partner with Unicorn Ventures.
Hi.
And we have Rayhaneh Sharif-Askary, Director of Investor Relations and Business Development with Grayscale.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. The intent today was to talk about really, there was a lot of talk earlier in the year, particularly about the role that institutions played in this, long. Prosperous bull run that we've had. Of course, Bitcoin just hit 68,000, hit an all-time high. So let's hear it for that. It's good to have some good news in crypto that isn't necessarily related to NFTs for once. It's a nice change of pace. But obviously there's more than just institutional involvement driving this kind of huge appeal. I mean, at some point, certainly if you compare talking about crypto right now versus 5 years ago, when talking about crypto in a company that weren't crypto friendly was quite nearly impolite, frankly. There were so many people that didn't want to hear about it, reporters that didn't want to hear about it in particular. It seems things have changed a lot. And we'll start with you, Ray. Where do you think this shift in perspective, the kind of the great mainstreaming which I believe is underway, where did the shift in perspective come from?
The people have called it the age of the retail investor. I think since early days for digital assets, retail investors have played a large role. Certainly institutions over the years have gotten more involved. But that role for retail investors has really changed. It's as though, and I will give an anecdote, but Bitcoin is almost a foregone conclusion at this point.
Sure.
And just like in a traditional asset class, we see folks diversifying. So too are we seeing that in digital assets. So for example, I have a sister, she's a doctor, she's a surgeon. She has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, never has had any interest, barely has time to breathe. Or, I'm like, are you coming to my wedding? And no response. I get a text from her the other day that's like, hey, Ray, should I buy something in the metaverse? And I'm like, wow, Bean, that's really interesting that you should bring that up. So that's just really telling of what we're seeing. And
is she going to have her wedding? Is the wedding in the metaverse?
There is no actual wedding.
She's trying to get her.
I'm not getting married. But it's telling. It's a good analogy for how engaged she is on the chats with us.
Sure.
But this is the sophistication that the investors are really moving beyond Bitcoin into other asset classes and the metaverse. Facebook's put the metaverse on the map. And now we're seeing a ton of interest in Decentraland, for instance, which is a DAO that has built a city on the metaverse. We have a product that's getting a lot of interest. So the diversification within digital assets is something that we're seeing a lot from retail investors and is a really natural evolution as the asset class becomes more mainstream.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I've interviewed just traditional financial planners and nothing, not relating directly to crypto at all. And at this point, particularly for millennials, but for Gen X as well, having crypto within your portfolio is just kind of standard these days. But again, any asset class, gold, 10,000 years old, Bitcoin just passed its 12th anniversary, I believe. The two are not the same in the grand scheme of things. Not when you put it that way, anyway. Not in terms of safe havens. So how did we go from some really kind of unfair beliefs that I think the general public had about crypto, which is, it's all a scam essentially. That's what I heard from everyone up to maybe about 3 years ago. To Bitcoin being considered, a safe haven by many, and a necessary part of or crypto being a necessary part of your investment. What do you think what has brought us here, Matthias? It certainly has been a busy past 2 years with many and quite eventful.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree, Justin. It has been quite a rough ride even in the last couple of years. To be honest, I joined Bitpanda only 3 months ago, so I've got a really good view on how the retail space evolved at Bitpanda, which, by the way, if you shouldn't know them, is one of Europe's leading digital assets platform. But I've also had the opportunity to actually see those things from a regulatory perspective, because previously I was working at the FCA leading on crypto assets and DLT stuff. And it was quite interesting to see how the narrative shifted from actually what you just described, something that was just associated with financial crime, with illicit use, with drugs, to something that actually was talked about in the context of, can it revolutionize financial services? Can the technology revolutionize the services, which was the first thought some had. So we're talking about blockchain, we're not talking about crypto, we're not talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about the technology that underpins all of this, which was the first sort of like step into this new idea of having decentralized infrastructure as a first instance. But I've also seen discussions moving on from actually having these sort of like decentralized infrastructures to something that values digital uniqueness. And I personally think it's incredible to have something like Bitcoin and other crypto assets that are, for the first time ever, digital representations of ownership that are completely independent from third parties. And I think as retail is adopting, as the use cases are getting much more interesting, institutions are getting into this space, retail investors are getting into this space. I think there's a lot of legitimacy that has been given to crypto assets, and including, and that's sort of like what I was working on for quite a while, regulatory frameworks. They slowly evolve. I mean, obviously there is still a lot of regulatory uncertainty, especially around DeFi and all these innovative new products. But I think with the first steps into AML regimes, so regimes to tackle anti-money laundering, you can see this space really growing, and even extremely well-known regulators and personas from financial services, they now see that there is a merit and that there is something really, really interesting about this space, and they move on. So I think if you combine all of this, you start to understand why digital assets become much more important, why they are going to be part of a diversified portfolio going forwards, and why I think we are just at the beginning of a pretty exciting journey. This is just the start. It's definitely not the end. Not for digital assets and not for retail investors at all.
Those are all observations I expect to resonate with the crowd watching, and certainly resonate with the panel. But I still wonder if there's have we and I'll bring this to you, Crystal, since where I'm going down the order. Have we? Is it a matter of, have we made the experience more accessible? Is there better education available? What's gotten people outside of the crypto sphere, which used to be a really hard delineation between those who would talk about crypto and those who didn't? What's brought it to the fore of public discussion?
Okay, mark the timer when the first mention of NFTs happens, because that's now. I think
no, I mentioned them earlier and how I was glad to not be talking about them. Actually, I love NFTs. I was just kidding. But go ahead.
I've been through it all. I started, and just in terms of technology, building on top of the Bitcoin blockchain in 2014, and then we continued on as smart contracts evolved and other chains were emerging. And my companies have built messaging tools, and we have built wallets on top of the EOS blockchain, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, most recently launching Bitcoin Libre, because we're seeing a resurgence in retail, not retail investment, but actually retail. One of the missions that I've been working on with my husband, Brock Pierce, and a very large delegation of amazing leaders around the world is called unicorn.org. It's the United Council of Rising Nations. We have been responsible for and participants in going into Central America and helping to advise on things like pro-innovation policy, pro-blockchain policy. And you'll see that the first successful country to bring Bitcoin on as legal tender in the world just happened in September. That was El Salvador. We are really excited to see that it's not just an investment vehicle anymore, but it is actually something that is having a retail use. If you have a piece of plastic in your pocket, you still don't need to use Bitcoin day to day. You are still not likely to use an asset class like this for purchases. But if you are in a developing nation, and for instance, El Salvador has 70% of the population unbanked, and you can get access to financial tools and non-traditional access to remittances that won't charge you fees, this is a big deal. So more than half of the population was already onboarded and had Bitcoin in their wallets within 30 days of this new law. That I think is one aspect. So where before I might not have said government is responsible for adoption, this is the first time ever. And going back to what Matthias was saying, that there used to be such a stigma. When I have been told in El Salvador that being involved with Bitcoin associates me with government, I was laughing because in my career, being involved with Bitcoin has associated me with anarchy and all the other aspects. And so I see that as a major success. My favorite project though, and the thing that I think is the most fun, everybody loves being in metaverse. I'm building an NFT gallery here in Puerto Rico, and the amount of excitement and the amount of people involved, because it is now moving into the creative realm and people are understanding fair value of creative output, whether that's art or music or anything that can be shared digitally. This is a new revolution. I keep saying that today, artists are going to be making more money living than dead, because for the first time, they can create a perpetual royalty system. They can add a royalty to every single sale of their artworks down the line. So, I'm really straddling sort of two areas. I love the investment side as well. And that's, Unicorn Ventures has fortunately been a participant in some of the biggest companies now to date, like Block One and Casper and others that have emerged in these last years. I feel very fortunate. But the most fun and the most interesting, and the thing I think is going to actually touch the majority of people and be that like mass adoption moment, that has to be NFTs in the metaverse. It's here, it's coming. Government will help, and the artists and the musicians, they're the ones that are going to take it over the line.
It has been a bit of a surprise. It's a valid point that, well, Mitch in the comments is saying, Doge caused everyone to respond to crypto, which if that were verifiably true, I'd find that hilarious. I'd love to write about that. I don't think that's actually true, but by putting, it seems it's been one of the big surprises that NFTs have been such an excellent mascot for relations from crypto to the outside world, which previously Bitcoin was pretty much our sole star. But there's so much information available to people now, Ray. Do you think that we're dealing with, obviously the numbers are showing that more people are investing in crypto, and that especially among millennials and Zoomers, more people are thinking about investing at a much younger age than they ever have before. Americans who notoriously don't save or invest in anything have really stepped up, particularly if you got TikTok investing and crypto on TikTok, Fintech, they call it. In terms of picking out your sources, arguably at this point, professional investors and retail investors have exactly the same tools at their disposal. But how do you sort out? Everyone says do your own research, but how do you sort out like reliable indicators and reliable sources to draw from as you make these decisions?
I think you make a great point. Obviously, a cute dog is relatable, and nothing like a cute mascot to anthropomorphize crypto. But it is being used in a much more serious way than that. And I think when you think about people actually investing in this asset class, they're using it in their IRAs. So for instance, we have 15 products, 9 of which trade publicly. People can buy them in their brokerage accounts like GBTC, ETHE. And so as part of that, there's a lot of retail investors that use those products. We've created a body of content and primers, and we've put them on our website, and others have done the same thing. So I think, we like to think that we're a trusted source for information and for education for investors. That's a role that we like to play. And I think that's, folks can continue to use our content, our products, and continue to do their own research as they have been.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth noting that companies like Grayscale, in a sense, play a role in the mainstream awareness. Just that you've got a fund so large, people respond to it. I wouldn't say necessarily in all things that retail investors are following the institutional investors, but perhaps in this case they are influenced by that. I mean, certainly a lot of fence sitters who are looking for places to put their retirement funds and so forth, right? I mean, would you say that you've seen some of that, right? I know that from talking to other people at Grayscale, I know that there are traditional finance companies that have been working with you to sort of build out their crypto capabilities. So you've seen a lot of those kinds of requests sort of coming in. I know that you're on the product side of it.
Yeah, we have. So we have a lot of, obviously institutional investors are a huge part of our business.
Right.
But at the same time, the IRA angle, for instance, is a big part for retail investors. And we've seen a lot. That's a trend we've seen increase a lot in the last year or so. A lot of people have made a lot of money investing in digital assets. And so they're like, wow, I'm paying a lot of this to the government. Maybe this is something I can be doing in a tax advantaged account. So we're trying to work with platforms to send the message out, like with the pharmaceutical companies run their commercials and they're like, hey, go ask your doctor about drug XYZ. That's what I'm trying to put out there. Like, go talk to your IRA provider about getting access to products that give you exposure to digital currency.
Mm-hmm. So Matthias, how long have you been involved in crypto, by the way? I know you were a regulator in the UK. You've been in this game for a while now, I take it.
Yeah, actually, the first time I got into crypto in a sort of like professional way was back in 2013 when I did legal and regulatory analysis on Bitcoin. Back in those days, Bitcoin was just a small little thing, but it already sparked some interest because of its digital uniqueness. Yeah.
I hope you bought a whole bunch of it at the time. That would be wonderful. What do you think is drawing people in now? Like, what's changed between I mean, at the time, honestly, like I couldn't imagine most people wouldn't touch it, frankly, going back that far. The majority.
Yeah, I think back in those days, basically my work was to identify risks, so it was all risk focused. Especially for regulators, which they always are. But I think there's a multifaceted picture here. Why are people interested in crypto assets? And I'm sure each and every investor has got their own intentions and will act according to what he's actually interested in. There is the typical crypto assets, the older ones, I'd say, the classical ones, and I'm sure there is loads of retail investors who basically see prices go up. They see, social media adverts. They are inspired by peers, but they also, at the same time, and I think that's the really, really big advantage that we should all harness. Younger people are suddenly really interested in financial concepts, in monetary policy. They ask questions around, what is money? I don't think that I did this at the age of 18 or 20. Thinking about these sorts of things, and it really triggers their interest in financial returns and what is inflation. How can I actually, ensure financial safety over the longer period of time of my life? And then they suddenly start to diverge from just crypto because it's cool to other asset classes. And that's exactly why at Bitpanda, for example, we are offering the same trading experience across crypto assets, traditional shares in a fractional way, and also metals, because we think, essentially you're spending like 3,000 years here. But we think that all these assets do have some interest for retail investors. And I think retail investors, because they are learning, because they're engaging much more, they also have got completely different expectations of how they want to be treated by traditional, or let's say by financial institutions. And they simply want to have an instant 24/7 slick experience when they invest. And I think, because it's so easy, accessible, it's interesting, and it's also really something you should do. Invest, for the future. That's the reason why I think people are getting more interested overall.
Right. And in the future, maybe it'll be more of a blurred line. I mean, honestly, it already is.
I think it totally is. I see so many crypto assets firms. So I've worked with quite a few as part of the FCA's regulatory sandbox. I was part of enabling the first DLT-based e-money. We've done tokenized shares. We've done all these sorts of things. I think increasingly these two worlds will merge together. I see Bitpanda sort of like bridging these gaps, and more will follow as you see institutional interest growing, basically on a daily basis, right?
And it's good to see that we've moved past the stigma of Bitcoin as being the province of shadow economy and drug deals and terrorist funding, because it always annoyed me that they would make that claim without showing me quantifiably that it has exceeded the US dollar. Do we want to surrender that? I mean, that's one of our accomplishments. I'm just kidding.
Honestly, like one of the greatest things I've ever experienced was back when I was at GCHQ, which is essentially like the FBI in the UK, where a really senior leader said that we would really love criminals to all use crypto assets, Bitcoin. He was mainly talking about Bitcoin because it gives them an opportunity to trace payments. That's incredible, globally, instantly. And for me, that was a really important moment because I finally realized that law enforcement is also seeing, a potential here rather than just a threat.
Right. Well, so Crystal, certainly, like you had alluded to a lot of the things that were also kind of mentioned, were alluded to in our keynote today, talking about essentially using Bitcoin to create greater access to financial instruments, greater financial equality. I know that this is something that this is work that had been done in Puerto Rico following the storm that they had a few years ago, and of course that you mentioned also the work in El Salvador. Do you think that we are moving toward a world that has some of these utopian ideals from the Bitcoin white paper about equality of access to financial instruments?
I think it's evident that we have our first test case. We have a country of 6.5 million people that onboarded more than half their population. And by the way, they only have 4.5 million adults. So, we're probably at 70% at this point. It is proven that in a cash-based economy, and they're a dollarized economy as well, so it worked really well to bring Bitcoin on as legal tender. It's proven that it is already working, that these people have at the baseline financial tools, financial access. The thing that surprised me is that the ATMs from El Salvador have popped up in Los Angeles. It's showing that the diaspora is using that to send money home to their family, and that the remittances market is going to be flipped on its head. So we have now visited other countries. We've been in Ecuador, Honduras, Panama, and others that have invited us. We have a list of about 30 more where the governments and the administration has requested these delegations to come of technologists and of experts in the field to give advice as they're writing policy. It's a very, very big movement, and I can't stress enough how this is such an impactful moment. We celebrated September 7th as Bitcoin Day, World Bitcoin Day, because for the first time ever, a country has adopted it, and this makes it a very serious issue. The IMF is still questioning what to do, but in their own policy, it says that they must accept any country's legal tender, and this has to be noted. Bitcoin, I think, it's taken a different form, and it's a much more serious tool. And the UN released a report that said that Bitcoin money laundering that they can find is about 0.3% versus the US dollar is about 2 to 5%. And it's hard for them to even trace that number because they don't have the same trackability. So there's definitely this movement and adoption. And I think that we're going to see that it's much more fun and much more interesting for people to put collectibles into their wallet. But in order to enter into that market, they have to get into crypto in some capacity. I'm looking forward to 3.0. I'm looking at the next layer chains, and as we see things like Casper evolve Ethereum, and as we see things like EOS come with another version of a transactionless network, or in an attempt to bring on more retail investors, and retail use cases. This is really exciting because I still think that Bitcoin is digital gold, and ultimately, even though this is a really good step for adoption, is not likely to be the one that people use to purchase bread.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. I think we're going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. Let's. I think we're also getting toward one of the last sessions of the day. So, in terms of advice for investors, we're all honestly, you're all deeply immersed in this, and have a point of view that's deeply immersed in this. So I know that I like to create sort of awkward situations sometimes, I guess. What advice do you have for investors? What do you tell people? You must have people outside of your sphere, Crystal, who are not into crypto. What do you tell them in terms of getting involved?
I never tell anyone to invest in anything other than themselves. And if you have the knowledge, then you're going to.
What if they say, "How do I get started?" Something like that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in that case, I usually ask, where do you live, or which jurisdiction are you? Because that informs what is the best wallet, what is the best exchange. In our country, in America, we have an issue still where we have things like the BIT license in New York, which prevents people from using common tools. So we're still struggling. Regulation is still in an area that needs to be worked out, and hopefully favorably to the world, because we don't want to be left behind. So usually it's who are you, what are you looking to do? What is great about this is that there's not a one for everyone. There's not a one size fits all. There are so many tools, and part of the reason why we endeavored on building the Bitcoin Libre wallet was because we were seeing that people have thousands of options, but they're still not all very good. There's always some reason why it's difficult, and I wanted to help that very use case of everybody's mom, and all of our families and all of the people that are coming into this generation of it, say, how can we use this the most easily? And so we built sort of the Venmo of Bitcoin, and now what I do is I look at tools that just have the best user experience and try to guide them that direction.
What about you, Matthias? What advice do you have in closing for our retail investors listening and the people you talk to in your own life?
Yeah, well, obviously, this is not financial advice, but if people ask me how, what, why, I think Crystal has said it all. There is no one size fits all. I would try to understand what people are actually curious about. Do they want to buy a CryptoKitty, or do they want to go to Decentraland, or do they just want to have some sort of cost dollar average investing into Bitcoin because they think that there is something valuable in it, and they want to do some saving plans. I think it's really hard to give general advice, but obviously here in Europe, we're still not in the US, but here in Europe, I would say just use a Bitpanda platform. It's the easiest way to get exposure.
Ray, you have anything to close us out with? Something positive. That would be good.
No, of course. Yeah, so not investment advice, but everyone out there, think about this as a new asset class. Think about it like you think about other asset classes. This is a risk investment. If there's a right size, whether that's 1% or 5%, you have to decide that. And, become aware and educate yourself on the on-ramps that already exist. You can go into your Schwab account or your Fidelity account and literally buy stocks that give you access to Bitcoin and to other digital currencies without having to deal with these headaches of getting on an exchange or losing your private key or getting hacked. So, and we're here to help, but think about it like a traditional investment, traditional asset class, and take your risk profile into account and right size your investment.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. What an outstanding panel. It was great to speak to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great conversation, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Justin. Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you soon.